Rise and shine, bitches. It is a Wednesday morning. CliffCentral.com. I'm Gareth Cliff. This is CS Sangweni, and we await the arrival of Gord Laws this morning, who joins us. Despite one email last week that was extremely mean about Gord, we love the feedback, by the way. We don't mind if you're a little bit mean. I mean, I think it's kind of important for all of us to occasionally take an insult. You know, we don't want to be called snowflakes. We don't want you coming down on us and saying, "Oh no, you guys are getting soft and you got no balls," and like, because the world is it's so full of soft people right now. Like, the last thing you need is more soft people, right? I think that's probably a very valid point of view. I don't know who all these young ladies in the world are going to marry if they're chasing after a bunch of beta males, because really that's what's happening. I mean, you know, if you're a girl and you want to marry a guy who, you know, if something happens, he can like stand up for himself and for you, right? Mm-hmm. I know this is a very strange place to start the show this morning, but it's like the whole idea of the whole purpose of a man is to protect. I really think that in a relationship, that's kind of the reason. I'm talking about straightforward old straight relationships, yeah. So obviously it doesn't apply across the board. But hello, Gordo.
Good morning, everybody.
Geez, look at you all awake. Gord.
Me, Olaf.
No, you're all awake and it's like you just kind of nice.
I know. I've been sitting here for a few minutes awaiting a link to join this broadcast.
But we were not ignoring you, I promise.
I felt very alone, but I had Blackie Chan in this dark time. How are you guys doing?
Very well. You came on at exactly the right time. I was about to launch into a diatribe of like what the point is of like all the weak men in society, but I think that's maybe a bit of a strong start, you know.
Let's start strong. Go right ahead.
No, we can circle back to this later, as Jen Psaki from Joe Biden's government would say. We circle back to this at another time in the show. We don't have to start with that. First of all, how's everybody on this short week? Because we've only got today and then 2 more days and the week's over again. It's back to weekend. Nice. And then the next weekend is also a short one.
You're speaking in terms of concepts of time. I'm sorry, I don't exactly remember how all of those work. It's like it's like BODMAS. You remember some shit like that, but you don't remember like the full form. Do you remember the formula? In like final matric maths, there was not just many formulas, there was the formula. And you forget those little bits and pieces, right? You just the broad gist of it.
I remember all those vector equations for the weirdest reason. I don't know why they're tattooed on the inside of my skull. V squared equals U squared plus 2AS.
What?
Yeah. That's a velocity.
That's velocity, yeah. Sorry, not vector equations, velocity. So that's V is for the velocity, the speed.
Oh my gosh.
V squared, U squared is starting velocity. 2AS is 2 acceleration and time. It always bothered me that S was time, you know? It's like, why would
do you remember all of that?
I don't know.
Because it's interesting shit. Also, I mean, to figure out velocity actually has uses.
No. Yeah, no, it's kind of handy. Like yesterday, funnily enough, I used it yesterday. Now that you mention it, you see, this is where suddenly like, no. In all seriousness, I used it.
Yeah, but you have a chemistry lab allegedly that may or may not have some illegal alleged things in it allegedly. So I've heard from friends it was probably slander.
No, first of all, there's nothing illegal because otherwise, you know, there would be no way to insure my house.
Of course, there's nothing illegal in that lab, Gareth. I know that.
No. Someone asked me the other day, like, do you have like, you know, really dangerous radioactive isotopes? And obviously not. I'd be, first of all, I'd be killing myself.
You don't want dangerous radioactive isotopes, but you do have some cool shit that, if held in your mortal hand, would render it chemically fucked.
Well, I mean, don't most school science labs? They do.
I remember I spent 1 year at like a deeply hippie school called the Michael Mount Waldorf School. It was a transitional phase. It was a transitional phase between, obviously high school in theory is 5 years long. So this middle year, I did 2 years at Sandown High School, which was like a government school that had a good reputation, and my brother had been there, so like me and all of my friends from primary school kind of together went to Sandown, and it just like wasn't great, even though we were friends with each other. No, I don't think anyone really wanted to leave. We were fine not getting private school education, but we all kind of just had to leave. So most of my friends then went to Eden College, which is where I ended up. And me and my one buddy were like, no, we dig the idea of this hippie school. They don't wear uniforms. Everyone's different.
Oh.
And then we found out, like when we went there, that everyone's identical. They are very different, but they're all identical. And you have to be different in quite a specific way. Now, look, it's a great place. I'm not like knocking them. Their whole philosophy, I think, works really nicely for some people. But I just looked at it and went like, oh, you guys have no idea. I come from where then there's no one to protect you. When I start picking on you in this place, you're just helpless. You're like a lemming. You can't tune back. You're all just so like nice. So I left after a year. My other buddy actually stayed there because he got into it. So yeah, definitely not a shitty institution, just the one where I didn't fit in at all. So I tortured everybody and was caused a massive limitation on the amount of learning that could be done for everybody for a year. I mean, they didn't know what to do about a class clown. I mean, teachers
Were you disruptive as hell?
The thing is, it depends whether you got me focused in the lesson. Like some of my teachers, my favorite of which recently passed away, have stayed in touch for such a long time. They just loved me because I didn't. If you got me involved in the lesson, my discussion with you about it would benefit the other students. Having me into it and talking about it was a great, like a positive for the class. But if I wasn't interested or had a friend next to me who was particularly witty, better to throw me out right at the beginning than wait until half the lesson's wasted and then throw me out.
No, for sure. So apparently, let's just start with this because Basetsana has just messaged us and says, hey guys, good morning. I've been up since 3:30. Have you seen what is happening in the Suez Canal? A colossal fuck up of note. I'm so amused. So I don't know what's happening in the Suez Canal.
No.
Let's take a look at that. That sounds really interesting. Like last Friday when we found out that the Zulu King was dead after the show. I mean, it wasn't something they announced before 9, but we did find out about it then. So here we are finding out about live news as it happens this morning. I don't know what's going on.
Breaking news.
Go on, tell us.
I am looking still.
Yeah, okay. Well, I did 2-3 fun things yesterday. I mean, I went through to the office as usual, had meetings with Sia and the rest of the crew, and we've got lots of great feedback on the YouTube show, and it seems people are logging on more and more. The numbers are going up, so that's looking terrific. Thank you very much for joining us in the mornings. Otherwise, what would be the point of this, right? And it goes without saying that that's why we wake up and we put on the show every day, because if you weren't listening and watching, it would be really pathetic. It would be like all those people who say they've got a podcast or they say they've got a show, but it's a hobby thing. And not everybody has to have a podcast. It's worth saying. I mean, I've been a massive fan of everybody starting their own. If you've got an idea to do it, good for you. But like I'm getting email requests from people who are like, "Yeah, I really want to do a podcast, and I think I'm gonna do this as my retirement job." And I'm like, "You think you're gonna make enough money podcasting to retire?" And they're like, "Yeah, definitely. This is my plan."
Very negative of you. One of them just now will. The other 999,000 that try, and it won't necessarily. But, I think doing anything that's like one of those build up momentum over time, learn how to do it over time, long-term commitment hobbies. Like, for example, when I started as a voice artist, I'd been talking cuck to entertain people my whole life, probably 20, close to 30 years. Yep. And my one buddy, who's my buddy Shane, who does quite well in advertising, he had been trying to cast a voice for a KFC ad that needed the whole man versus the world. Man, 1, whatever the world can throw at you. 0, get a Boxmaster from KFC. So there's I'd been in magazines for 10 years, but qualified in advertising. So I'm just starting out in advertising. So I know what the room looks like. There's like 5 people in the room and they're auditioning voice artists. And, no one's quite right. And my buddy Shannon's like, look, let me get my pal Gord in to show you what sort of voice we're looking for. And then we know what we're actually looking for. So asked me to come in and demonstrate the voice for the team so they could continue looking for a voice artist. And one of them was like, why don't you just record it now? And so I kind of ended up doing it without any commercial intent, just to talk shit. And then I managed to convert it into a job. But I've still never been able to support myself on it. But with time, you build up a client base, you get better at it. And it's not the hard voiceovers you have to get better at, it's the crap ones.
You know what, that being able to live off just doing voiceovers is also a bit of a figment of some people's imagination. Like you can make enough money to like maybe pay your grocery bill every month if you're
and every now and again you get like a massive cash injection bonus because something gets renewed that you did a year ago. I mean, in voiceovering there is such a thing as money for free. You do a piece of work and a year later they pay you for it again to keep using it. But no, you're not going to support yourself. There are very few people, even in SA, who can just doing that.
No, absolutely. It's a very, very niche thing. And there just isn't enough. Like, people aren't going to pay that for a radio commercial anymore for the production of that. Whereas before.
Although the radio voice is very cheap. I've always thought like, because I make as many ads as I voice. And I've always thought like, we pay far too much for TV voices. If you're paying at the full rate, which no one's done since 2006, we pay too much for TV voices and not nearly enough for radio voices. You make after agents commission and tax. I mean, I don't want to like open up the fourth wall or whatever, but I don't think anyone gives a shit. For a radio ad, depending on how many stations it's going to be used on and for how long, you walk out with about 800 Rand to 1,500 Rand. And that's your whole ad. Like, did you know that at Pharmacare, you can get whatever the fuck you want? Pharmacare pharmacists. We love titties. And like, it doesn't matter what you're reading, how big the brand is, whether it's a tiny ad for nothing that's going to be on a regional radio station or it's the new Toyota advert, same amount of money. So, yeah, I mean, look, but at the same time, you go in, you talk shit for an hour, you try not to laugh at how bad the script is. Because remember, I write these ads, right?
You would voice these things and it would be, I hated doing voiceovers. Eventually, I said, I'm not doing them. In fact,
you have to embrace the shitness or you're dead.
Yeah, I just hated that there was some ad agency person. Let me explain the side of it that I didn't enjoy.
Frustrated you?
Because, well, okay, so you wouldn't have heard my voice on any commercials for probably since about 2004 until 2014. For like 10 years, you wouldn't have heard my voice on any commercials at all, except promos for my own show. And the reason is you'd go into a studio. So let me explain how it works. You sit in a booth where we've got a microphone. It's usually padded like a lunatic asylum for sound purposes. And you sit down and they give you a script. And the script is either like 1 or 2 lines or it's a paragraph. And then you have to read it. And then there's a room full of people from the ad agency and from the client, whoever that might be, insurance company or whatever it is. And they sit in a room with like sofas and there's a tea tray and there's like a little dish of sweets and, they kind of...
I'm still waiting for the part at which this is a problem, but everything you've described so far is incredibly accurate. What color were the little triangular foamy things in your booth?
It doesn't matter. Anyway, these people are sitting down. And some of them are on their phones, not even paying attention. You could see they're not really sure why they're there either. But there's always one person, and it might have been a man or a woman, depending. And that one person is deeply interested in how you deliver every line. Like they're an expert.
Yes.
They haven't studied linguistics. They're not particularly effective in communication themselves because when you meet them, you don't even remember meeting them. And they have an extraordinary interest in the way that you deliver every single word. And sometimes their expectation of how you'll deliver the word is not at all how natural people speak, which is why so many ads sound stupid.
You have to embrace it.
Gord was taking the piss just now, but this is how it goes. So it would be, for example, don't forget to buy this tomorrow. Now you would
sorry, Gareth, that was lovely. But can you put a little bit more? Can you put a bit emphasis on this? So it's not
Yes.
you must buy this tomorrow. It's you must buy this tomorrow.
I'll go again.
Try
So I'll go.
again. Thanks so much, but it's great though. It's coming along great. Carry on.
Don't forget to buy this tomorrow.
Okay, just hold on. We're putting you off talk back. Now we'll talk about you for about 4 or 5 minutes together through the
Yes.
glass where you can see but not hear everyone. Gareth, we really liked what you did there with this, but it was a little too much. Can you meet us somewhere in the middle? But the best thing that you can do is if you're friends with the sound engineer and you actually have them play your second or third take after 24 takes and they go, that's great, we'll have that. There's also a person in the room who always is just there to like change something. They, like you say, they play on their computer, they completely ignore it. At the end, they get asked, are you happy? Everyone has to be happy. And they're like, oh, I need to just smear a little bit of shit on this so that it's kind of also mine. Can you just break something quick? But you see, I make ads and I often am voicing ads where if a junior creative came to me with that ad as a creative director, they would know that they were going to get in a lot of trouble for even trying to bring me that. Like, I'm not a dictatorial Hitler type of boss.
So if I was sitting in that booth, which I did, right at the beginning of my radio career, I was like, let's do this because it's easy money. I just go and sit in a studio for, half an hour or whatever. But eventually, and then you have to invoice them separately, and it's, you've got to add VAT, and it's a very complicated.
Agents. But dude, I
get their commission, and then there are a whole lot of things, and I just thought at the end, for what am I doing this for like 800 to 1,500 rand?
Well, for me, it's like I genuinely enjoy it, and the way that I got past kind of wanting to rip my hair out and going, geez, like you wrote this ad and somebody educated signed it off, is to embrace it. Like the shitter they want their ad. Gee, I don't know where to get help for my sore ankle. Well, young man, that's because you need ankle cream. What's that, old dad? Ankle cream? Yes, ankle cream. And I just read it.
I've got to give credit to some of the people who made it, who got their voices stuck in ad agencies' heads.
Yeah.
People like ENF or Alex J or
the Celsi lady.
Or the Celsi for yourself.
Celsi for yourself.
Those people did an incredible thing because what they did is they convinced everybody in advertising that is how a good ad sounds. And as a result, the people from every agency tried to make us all sound like that, which is incredible. So I found, for example, I'd be reading. Let me just use this shirt as an example because this was a present I got yesterday.
You're pretty socialist, it says, for the list. You petty socialist, excuse me, it's that early.
Yeah, I think we're coming to a year of celebrating that phrase as well.
It's almost a year to celebrate petty socialist, which Gord, I don't know if you know about this, but somewhere around March, April of last year when lockdowns had just started, I went on Ridi Tlabi's show and there was a guy on there.
Sorry, whose show did you see? I missed that.
Ridi Tlabi. And we were on her show, and it was one of the first shows that was doing like virtual stuff because we obviously couldn't record in a TV studio when the hard lockdown was on last year. And Reedy had this guy on who argued with me about, I was saying lockdowns are going to have a very detrimental effect on people's lifestyles and on people's jobs and on the economy.
Who could have foreseen that, Gareth, with closing the economy and everything? How could anyone have known you were right?
But there it is. And of course I was right. And this moron, and he was a moron. I still don't know I can't remember his name. Something like Demille or Bramil or something like that. Anyway,
let's rather not remember his name, what with calling him a moron.
So, well, he's a moron. And I don't know that he's ever been able to walk around after that interview without people calling him a petty socialist, because that was what I called him in the middle of the interview. He was like, but you just want people to die. You're not taking this disease seriously. I was like, it's not all black and white. It's like gray, there's a health concern, but there are other concerns that also have a huge effect on people. Anyway, I called him a petty socialist, and it probably went wild and viral on the internet before almost anything else had during lockdown last year. It was a big deal. It got endless amounts of attention, even internationally. So people made like little articles of clothing. They made little dolls. They made all kinds of things. There were people who changed their name on social media to petty socialist and that kind of thing. This one is actually this lovely shirt, which is brand new. I got it yesterday in the mail to mark the 1 year anniversary of me calling that guy a petty socialist. This one's from the comedian Joe Emilio, who I just want to say a quick thank you to. And he sent it to me. He's actually got a little store online called rebelstoreza.com. And he sent this to me in our Cliff Central colors. So there it is.
Very
You
cool.
petty socialist. So thanks, Jamil. Anyway, let's say now that I'm doing an ad for this. And I would say, get your petty socialist t-shirt today. Right? That's how I sound. And to me, the best way for me to sound is like me, because then it's authentic and then I can sell it. But this is how they'd want me to do it. Get your pettysocialist.com t-shirt today.
Yes. And if you order now, you can get up to 25% off. And then you have to throw in the Alex J chuckle.
Here's the irritating thing is they'd say to me at the end of that ridiculous delivery that I just did, they'd go, that's not excited enough. Can you sound more like into it than you did?
Because they're different tones, yes.
Oh, for the love of God, and eventually it's like, I don't want to do this. This is too humiliating. I know how to talk. I've been talking since I was a kid. And I think selling things doesn't come down to how fake excited you sound or how much of an accent you're putting on, but how real you are.
But you see,
I never got it because you embraced it. And
for me, it's exactly that. Like, I'm not trying to be myself. Like, I'm character acting. So if you want the worst eagle eye cinema, look, Dad, a fish eagle. Where? I can't see it. If you want that ad to be as bad as you want to break the record for a bad ad like that, I'm your guy. If you want to do comedic acting, like there's a wonderful sort of, he's a public figure / speaker actor, Ash Taylor. And Ashley Taylor and I, when we get in a booth together, it's the best fun ever because we just embrace these characters. And we almost kissed once. And neither of us, to my knowledge, are actually gay. What? We just got so into being a gay couple having a fight over a cell phone that we were face to face. And it was like, so you really have to get into it. And also, like, I'm not by any means trying to suggest every ad I voice is bad. You get to do some really cool ones. And sometimes if you let the ad being bad and you being bad in it bother you, you're screwed, because only my friends can tell that it's me in certain ads. You would probably have been hired, paid a premium to be yourself. People can hear it to you endorsing the product. I'm just random dickhead. All right, but no one knows who it is.
We've just spoken about a career option that isn't available to like 99.9% of people. So we'll just dump that. But anyway, it might give you some insight into how that weird world works.
Just a quick final word on that, GC. I've got on gordlaws.coza, I've got an article, comprehensive article, how to get started as a voice artist. It's not selling anything. It's just there to people to answer the questions people ask me. So gordlaws.coza, search voice artist. And another kind of interesting thing for people just to get started, if they do want to, is start. I've got friends with great voices who've been saying they should be doing voiceovers for 10 years. My best friend Gum's better at it than me. He just doesn't do it. So just start.
Put a little reel together and
start.
And, there is, at the very top of the voiceover business, there is huge money to be made in like the animated movies that we see these days. So,
or like you say, if you become the voice of a campaign that makes 2 radio ads a week and a TV ad update. One of my great friends and former boss, Felix Kessel, was, I think, I stand to be corrected, but Edgar's ads. He did like all of them for like 3 years. And that really financially changed his life from being a sort of middling to senior creative on the up part of coming up to like an oak with some spare money, just because they wanted the same voice every day for 3 years.
A quick thing, just because this was dropped in by Basetsana, she's just let us know what was going on with the Suez Canal. Here it is.
Oh, yes. Oi, there is a ship that is stuck sideways in the Suez Canal that has literally halted world trade.
Jesus. I mean, that's
Don't block the Suez Canal, X. That's even worse than causing a traffic jam by stopping in the road part of a parking lot outside of the shop so that you can be closer to the door and everyone else must now deal with your bottleneck. That's like even worse.
Yeah, Sharon.
Do you understand the pressure that person is going through trying to get it out of the way?
That person should drive another 100 meters and park like everyone else, or get their car destroyed by a destruction tank.
Have you ever seen like a housefrau in a very big people carrying car in a parking lot in a shopping center where the parking space is a little bit smaller than normal parking lots, especially those underground ones? I mean, most people couldn't move a Pajero. This poor idiot is trying to move a massive container ship which has blocked the Suez Canal. That is outrageous. I mean, you shouldn't be able to
no.
drive a ship again after you've done that, right? Surely this guy's going
I
to have
mean,
his...
there are certain factors out of your control that can do things to a ship that no one intended.
Yeah.
But at the same time, this is like reminds me of that scene in Austin Powers where the henchman is where Austin's trying to 3-point turn the vehicle and can't. I just imagine that in a huge ship, and it tickles me a bit pink, especially if it's like, "Mwah, eh, doop, 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 doop,
Imagine.
mwah,
That
And
is so
obviously
much pressure.
the Suez Canal must be going on. It was built in like the 1950s. So I'm thinking, with its odd 70 years of history, I don't know if this has happened before.
Is it only
That
that old? I thought that young. I thought it was older.
No, it's about 50 years old. They actually had to dig it. Nasser was president of Egypt at the time that happened, and the Suez Crisis famously was one of the first crises that post-war Britain had to face. Anyway, it's an interesting story, and I'm sure the Egyptians are very angry about this because they get paid for everything that goes through the Suez Canal. So if it's blocked, and remember, the whole reason that you have to have the Suez Canal is because if it's blocked, people have to go all the way around Africa to get to India, or if you're coming from China, you now have to go all the way around Cape Town rather than just up through, past the
But
Persian Gulf,
you can pick up quite a lot of fish on that trip.
Red Sea.
If you
Yes.
just trawl behind you while you sail casually past, you can take half the cod population if you've got a big enough sail past vessel.
Yeah. But maybe you've got steel, or maybe you've got electronics on board, and fishing is not your priority. That's all I'm thinking.
You can always do both. I mean,
Yeah.
crap in the ship, gigantic 400-meter nylon net behind the ship. When you get home, dinner.
So I wonder, because Basetsana says you must see the traffic that's being caused by this mess. I mean, I just love, you see, this is what I love about our audience. It's like she is on top of this story, and she's more informative right now to the rest of us than if Sia and I had to go and dig up an article from somewhere else. 'cause
You
she's
mean
been watching-
Basetsana actually checked the news headlines before she started her informative radio show this morning at 6? Mhm.
Exactly.
No,
But
but,
I mean,
granted, she's been awake since
been watching it since
ridiculous
3
o'clock. Good for her. Yeah.
That's good. Anyway, so that's one thing. The other thing is that somebody corrected me quite right. When we go back to science equations, I'm afraid my memory was much more hazy than I thought. But where she says S is for distance in the velocity equation. So
I would not have known that.
I had to check on that. Very, very good. All right. Couple of things. I know that we've got a massive agenda for this morning, but I do want to remind you a little bit later on. Phil Kutzer will be joining us. Of course, we've spoken to Phil a couple of times before. He's the owner, dealer principal at DeWitt Motors. They're in Ermelo, and we've spoken to Phil about all kinds of cars, and really, he's the guy to talk to. In fact,
There's no one to fill you in like Phil.
That's correct. Just like, last week, for example, I sent 2 people to him who are looking for cars, and they said they had terrific experiences with the guy. So these days it's who you know. It's not what you know. And he is the guy to know when it comes to the stuff. So if you're buying a used or a new car, then we'll talk to him a little bit later on. He's got some really good advice. Also wanted to find out what the market is like at the moment, because I would imagine, because of lockdown and everything else, a lot of people are either downgrading or they are looking for something that's perhaps more fuel efficient. They're not driving as much as they would be in normal times. So we're going to find out about prices. We'll find out about what kinds of cars are most popular at the moment. And I thought that might be interesting for all of us to eavesdrop on that conversation. So that's coming up. So Gord and Sia and everybody else, do you want to hear some headlines? The ones that...
Yes.
The ones that...
And in the news today, over to you with the news headlines, Gareth Cliff.
I think you want to do more voiceover work, Gord.
I love it, dude. My favorite way to earn money. And I would honestly, if I'd independently wealthy and there were studios nearby and they called me, I'd do it for free. Not now going to do it for free, but if I was rich, I'd do it for free. Not as often, and not if it's far away, and not if it's at a time that doesn't suit me. But send me to Hey Papa Legend or Audio Militia Studios, and I'll make whatever.
You've made it so irresistible. I mean, how can we say no?
To a point, it's something I do and have always done anyway. But anyway, we've got to get to the news headlines in the studio. Over to you, Gareth Cliff.
Don't know where you got that idea, but that's how you always hear headlines in your head. All right, Public Enterprises Minister Pravin Gordhan was on until like 8 o'clock last night on TV live being interrogated by Dali Mpofu. It was fun to watch, and I wouldn't say that about Pravin Gordhan a lot of times. Usually the words fun to watch and Pravin Gordhan are polar opposites in most people's books, but it was a hell of a thing to see because they were quizzing him about the South African Revenue Service when he was finance minister and questioned him about the rogue unit that he set up there. Gordhan was cross-examined by Tom Moyane's lawyer and advocate Dali Mpofu at the State Capture Commission on Tuesday. Mpofu said some of the members of the unit confessed to Moyane, but Gordhan denies instructing anyone to work there. It's just amazing how these two were trading insults with each other. By the end of the interrogation, the cross-examination, let me not call it an interrogation. By the end of it, Pravin was like asking the judge Raymond Zondo to intervene for his reputation. You had Dali Mpofu getting frustrated that he didn't feel his questions were being answered. It was a real mess. But
I just saw one particular moment with the advocate going, "Shut up," to the other lawyer, and I thought, "Oh, okay, shut up! I'm speaking now." Thinking,
yeah, it got very hairy, and at one point, Dali Mpofu said, to advocate Michelle Leroux, who I think we've had on the show as well. We've had both of them on, Dali and Michelle. And he said to her, the best thing you could do for your client right now is to sit down.
That's getting big boyed or big girled in front of everyone.
And it was so funny because Dali at one point was also trying to convince the judge that Pravin Gordhan is a condescending racist. Okay. And I mean, that's a hard thing to prove, but eventually Dali started sounding condescending towards Pravin, saying things to him like, "Are you sure you can understand at least that?" Things like it got really
it's like
catchy.
memes people post that are like bark instruction memes. Don't ever allow this. You are a snowflake. And if anyone, like you're giving people instructions where it's like, I wish this is how I behaved also. And it's like the irony, there's ones that are literally like, don't ever let someone tell you what to do. No one can push you around. You are your own snowflake, be free in the wind. And you're like, you just barked an instruction at everyone.
I sometimes wish after a proceeding like we saw last night, and if you watched it, you'll know what I mean. Hopefully our description now has given you some idea of how fractious it was. But I've always wished you could have a camera just a couple of minutes after when they, when people are like getting up to leave and you could hear Pravin like going, "Fucking asshole," under his breath.
Yes.
Or, you'd have Dali going, "What a piece of shit." That, I'd just love to see those guys just for a few minutes more, like trading insults with each other and how they really feel, because
or they walk off and they're like, "Prav, Dal, sorry, no hard feelings, mate. That was a pretty good jousting session. Oh, you got me with a few winners there, bro. But I'll get you next time, Chan. There's only a week. Wait what I'm cooking up."
You might not be so far from the truth, because we know these politicians, right? And most of what they do is, and let's just be fair, both Pravin and Dali Mpofu are more politician than they are lawyer or public services bureaucrat, finance bureaucrat, as Pravin was. They probably do behind the scenes. I mean, we've seen like Julius is best friends with, this one, and like he'll get along with Malusi or with Pule Mabe or with any of these guys. And even though they're ANC, they have good relations off camera, and it's posturing. But I don't think that these two like each other. There was a lot of real like resentment and bitterness and anger. I think they've both been down a long road of disliking each other. And Dali's representing Tom Moyane, who feels very slighted by Pravin, and Pravin feels that Tom Moyane was one of the agents of state capture. So it's all getting very hairy, and it's worth watching if you're interested in this kind of thing. It got my attention, and I ended up watching for like an hour last night, I'm embarrassed to say. So what can I tell you?
On the topic of watching something for an hour, and I don't want any spoilers, although you kind of have known the premise if you've been paying attention since before it came out, but the Zack Snyder cut of Justice League is out. And I've heard that it's being 4 hours long. It's not only enough to redeem that gigantic pile of dog shit that was Justice League and every DC movie, especially Wonder Woman 1984. Wonder Woman is like the only thing they've got right since Christian Bale and Heath Ledger. And even that Heath Ledger's performance saved what was basically an average movie. But the Snyder Cut's out. It's 4 hours long, and it's apparently totally awesome.
Who
So
has 4 hours?
well,
to
it was. They
go
were
through
debating whether to
something?
make it. For a long
Ask you
time, they were
one-
debating.
since we've gone down this path, there are actually 2 questions I got to ask you. Just remind me, because we've got to come back to it. I just want to finish up with the headlines, and we'll
Oh, sorry, I
pick
thought
this
that
up,
was the
because
last headline.
got me
My
thinking
bad.
about it.
My bad.
So
Sorry, please continue.
Moonchild on. No, don't worry. No. This is a show. I mean, we talk about a bunch of things. Don't feel bad. Moonchild says Mpofu's behavior was disgraceful, and I bet you we will find people who thought that Praveen was disgraceful. So really, it's interesting that if you choose your side, you decide who you're going to back, no matter what they say or do. The Western Cape has lost more than 151,000 jobs in 2020. That's a very, very scary number.
Jeez.
It's lower, I've got to say, than I thought it would be. But in Cape Town, they just released this jobs survey yesterday, Global Economic Priorities Outlook for 2021. And the trade and investment agency, Westgrow, said it expected the economy to grow this year, 2021. But they said last year was a disaster. The CEO, Tim Harris, who used to actually be the DA's shadow minister of finance at some point, he came out with this very interesting survey that's about how many people lost their jobs in tourism, the informal construction and trade industries, which were the hardest hit, obviously. Westgrow said other sectors affected included manufacturing, finance, community services, and transport. Tim Harris said that he was hopeful that this year would be better than the last. We heard our chief economist reflecting on the current trends, which we think emphasize Cape Town and the Western Cape and their ability to take advantage of things like the rise in the digital economy and the real boom in agricultural exports, which actually has happened. Meanwhile, Economic Opportunities in Finance MEC David Mania said that they would work with all spheres of government.
Mania?
Maynier.
Cool.
Damn it.
Yeah, I know. If it was Mania, that would be great.
You could almost claim that you spelt it hip, like it's more cool for being spelt wrong.
Yes. He said they would work with all spheres of government and the private sector to help grow the economy. And that's from EWN this morning. Also from them, you remember Zandile Gumede, huh? Remember her, Sia?
Just the gift that keeps on giving when it comes to a disastrous story of leadership.
This is the woman who was the former eThekwini mayor. She's currently she was running the city that Sia is currently in, Durban. Zandile Gumede said that the case against her was part of a smear campaign against the ANC.
Of course.
If it was a smear campaign, Zandile, then how come you have given them so much smear to campaign with you, to campaign against you with? If you were such a model mayor, which we absolutely doubt that you were, then maybe you'd have a case to say that. But there's no such case. This woman is accused of fraud, corruption, money laundering. It's all linked to a 2017 multi-million rand waste collection tender. I mean, you couldn't get more smear than waste collection, right? And in an indictment, the state has alleged that Gumede's improper interference into the appointment of service providers also benefited the governing party, its councillors and structures such as the MKMVMA, that's the Military Veterans Association of Mkhonto weSizwe. So this woman is trying to say that all the bad things she didn't do, and that it's a smear campaign by unknown third forces against the ANC. No, honey, what you've done is you've brought disgrace upon yourself and the ANC. You are responsible for ruining the ANC's reputation in eThekwini. You are responsible for improperly benefiting. You are a criminal. That's why you're facing criminal charges. And this has nothing to do with some sinister third force that's trying to set you up. It's amazing how there are people in this world. This drives me crazy. There are people in this world who just cannot take responsibility for themselves. Never their fault. It's got to be some sinister person hiding in the shadows, making shit up about you.
Well,
No.
when it's clearly a bullshit excuse, as I assume this is, I don't know the story, so I've got to make that assumption. But when it's clearly a bullshit excuse and it's lying, it's one thing. When you have the mentality, and every single person, including all three of us and all humans, have a predisposition to find the angle first where you either not wrong or are right. Being right, I think, is the need to be right long before you care about what the issue is something that all humans need to sort of be aware of. And the earlier you start, if you can get your kids aware of it, that's probably a good thing. Not that I'm a parenting expert, but the desperate need to be right, or if there's salvaging things not the most wrong, is more important to, I would say, 90% of people than whatever the issue is. You and me will sit and fight over whose fault it isn't or whose fault it's less that the shed's on fire, and never just go, well, can the two of us put the fucking shed out and then maybe talk about what to do about fixing the shed? Or we're going to sit here and insinuate that it's more your fault than mine. It's not really my responsibility. And you laugh, and everyone listening going, yeah, no, I hate people like that. But if you are hearing this, there's a 90% chance you do this often, because we all do, and you have to work at it because you're not automatically right.
But let me tell you, there's a difference, Gord, between what you're saying and actual criminal charges which have been brought against her and
so if you're lying about not being guilty, that's one thing, but if you genuinely believe you're always right, then there's no reasoning with you.
Well, this is
no, man. I don't know how you get into that warped idea that, woe unto me and it's not my fault and I didn't get into this willingly. She is, it's her and 21 other people who are collected in these current charges, and it's more than 2,000 charges against them. I don't even know how the court will continue to keep track.
They're like a 5-year-old Tesla.
Whoa.
Exactly. If someone is going to
Sorry, Gord, I got that.
If someone's going to make up one or two fake allegations, as Zandile Gumede asserts, then that would be great. But for someone to sit there and concoct 2,000 charges for her and her friends, that sounds like a lot of work.
It's a lot of charges.
And I would love to know who's so motivated that they not just want to drag her through the mud and ruin her perfect reputation, which of course it isn't. But
Gareth, what's going to happen in court? Don't they usually look at, for example, like the 5 strongest charges that they can use to discuss or debate and go with that? Because, you really can't go with 2,000. That's a lot of time.
Dipiwe says it's actually 2,700 charges. So Lord. It just gets worse and worse for them. Unbelievable. And Tracy says that it's called narcissism, the ultimate deniers. These people.
Yeah, but it's also a thing. It's also a thing with narcissists and psychopaths and whatnot. Like, anytime you had an ex that it didn't work out with and they used to slam doors and raise their voice, they're a psycho. Anytime you had a person who was more self-centered than cared about you, they're a narcissist. When those things are real and in your life, I've dealt with at least one of those on like a real basis. It's not something you would throw around. It's like throwing around rapist. It's like, oh, because you looked at a woman inappropriately. Yes, I'm not going to start that argument. All of that shit is wrong, but there's degrees. So if someone's a bit of a dick, they're not necessarily a narcissist, and we all have narcissistic tendencies. So it's not just the raging narcissists who should go see someone that consider themselves right all the time. They're just kind of pathological about it. Everyone starts from a position of I must be right at all costs. Now, what are we talking about?
Mm-hmm. No, you're right. And let's also remember.
Of course I am. Always am.
Narcissism is one of the ingredients of some very successful people. So you've got to be careful not to condemn the whole personality trait as being utterly destructive and as you put it.
But it's also the trait of great killers.
Yes,
that's psychopaths usually. But the point is that I don't disagree with the listener. I'm just saying, when you use the word narcissist, a bit narcissistic, and saying someone's a narcissist is like you're a bit creepy versus you're a serial rapist. There's like degrees.
All right. Ruth and Avril both saying people should smash that like button more. Well, we got some interesting kudos yesterday. I'll break in the middle of headlines because we were actually featured on the the Apple podcast store, the main page, which is quite a big deal.
Alas.
So there are probably a whole bunch of new people listening to us this morning from all over the world. So if you're one of those people, that's awesome. Thank you for joining us. I don't know that too many South African podcasts make it onto the international page like that. So that's really good news. And even though we've kind of made our mark on South Africa in terms of podcasts, it's always nice to get a little bit of a boost. So big ups to Apple for putting us on that one. Okay. Benjamin Netanyahu and Israel. This is so complicated. I'm going to try and summarize this as best I can. So Israel basically has an election every 3 days because every government there is a coalition government. And it's really complicated. I mean, if you've got, and by no means do I intend to stereotype here, but if you've got Jewish friends, there's something that Jewish people learn to do at an early age, which I think we could all learn from, and that is that they learn to question things. Like you argue with your rabbi, basically. You kind of contend with what you think and what they think, and afterwards, hopefully, you emerge wiser and someone changes their mind. This is the basis of much of rational Western thought, and the Jewish contribution to that must not be underestimated. The downside of being questioning and argumentative, as so many in Israel are, and there's a big difference between Israel and Jews generally, but I would say it's a personality trait that's extraordinarily evident in many of my Jewish friends, and therefore I'm going to impute it to the Israeli political scene. Basically, in Israel, everyone has an opinion. And in Israel, people are very vocal about their opinions in politics. There is an extreme right with the Orthodox Frumies. There's an extreme left with kind of Western liberal democracy, almost socialist types. There are the people in the middle, and nobody really can come to any kind of arrangement on how the government should be structured. And the party that usually takes the lead is Likud, which is run by Netanyahu at this point. He's the front man for Likud. And their primary interest is Israeli self-sustained, well-defended, prestige in the world, having allies like America, and really looking to themselves. And Likud is considered by many to be a conservative party, and the other major party is one that is much more to the left of center. But there's always a big issue around who runs the government because it's always such a close-run thing. And Benjamin Netanyahu yesterday claimed victory following their fourth election in less than 2 years. You see what I mean?
Are these like governmental elections where bodies of government vote, or is it like people standing in queues to vote a couple times a week?
It's proper elections, the kind that we have every 4 years.
So citizens standing in queues and putting things in boxes. Geez, and how often, like, did you say?
Well, this is their fourth one in less than 2 years.
So every 6 months you got to go vote.
Well, pretty much. Israel, and this is because the government needs a mandate. Otherwise, how do they know how to make policy?
But imagine if there was that measure and check in place, right? Imagine if every 2 years the government, if they weren't doing well, just got kicked in the ass.
Well, in Israel, every 6 months, it's basically a referendum on the government. And I don't know that that's a bad thing. I'm not complaining. But
I was going to say, like, given that you have extremes, this is an extreme case of constant, like, public opinion democracy. Whereas here, it doesn't matter how badly the majority party screw up or how much of a big giant fuck you everything is, people will just still vote for them. And there's no meaningful, reasonable opposition that can mount much of a threat.
Well,
so your voting is limiting the incumbent's power, and that's all. Whereas there, it's like you can't really get shit going, can you?
No, I mean, this is the point, is you can't really make policy if you've only got 6 months to make it and then someone comes in and changes it. So Netanyahu's hoping that this will be a much more strong and decisive mandate, but it doesn't look like it is. He's got a very fractious right-wing coalition behind him. There have been 3 inconclusive elections since 2019, and he's campaigned mostly on really what has to be said is the world's leading coronavirus vaccination effort. Israel probably did this better than any other country in the world. If you want to see an example of how you can handle this coronavirus pandemic, the most responsible way possible, I think Israel's got to be at the top, or at least in the top 5 of every list, no matter who you are putting that list together. They've inoculated roughly half of their 9 million people, a pace that is envied by much of the world. Projections based on exit polls from Israel's 3 leading broadcasters all show Netanyahu winning the most seats in Israel's 120-seat parliament, the Knesset. So that's as much as I'm prepared to say about the Israel vote this morning. Obviously, we don't know the exact.
It's way more than what we know, so we're grateful.
You got to have an app or something if you need to vote that often. I mean, they got to figure out something.
Listen, I wouldn't be surprised if Israel already has voting mechanisms that are much better than people standing in queues, or perhaps just a lot more valid, a lot more rigorous than other parts of the world. You know, that place is so advanced in some ways. And if you've ever read any book about Israel, let it be a brilliant book called Startup Nation, because that'll tell you about the personality of how a country, and I say the country has a personality because it really does. That place is just fertile ground. It's not fertile ground in terms of actual desert, but it's fertile ground for any startup businesses. And so many great ones have come out of there, including, you know, I used it yesterday, Waze. Is a great example. Anyway,
how to make your own neighborhood that you've grown up in exciting again by taking you routes that no human being would ever take on purpose. Like, would you like to avoid the traffic? Yes, Waze, avoid traffic. We'll be going through the Yixkay River.
No, you're full of shit,
man.
Waze has saved me so many times from hectic traffic situations, hectic ones. If I have Waze on, I never have a mistake.
I had a bestie I won't mention, but they used to be largely a pedestrian, a person who walked everywhere, and then they would insist while you were driving that you turn left, and you're like, no, I'm going to Sandton City, turn left. Okay, left. And now you're like, okay, now I'm entirely dependent on you for directions. Like, and then they stop paying attention, and you're like, at what point do I have to do something? And then they go, oh, dude, turn right as you're driving past the road. You either have to do a handbrake turn like Michael Knight, or you've got to just like now do a U-turn later because now you don't know where to go. And they take you the best way to walk, which is not always the best way to drive.
Sia knows this. When you're in my car with me, do not tell me which way to go because I'm driving. If you're driving,
let's just not go down that road.
You just have to use emergency voice with the implication that I'll explain afterwards why it's so important, and then you fact. Excuse my language.
I don't want anyone to give me directions while I'm driving, but we'll go down that road later. Just to quickly finish off, U.S. President and very, very old man Joe Biden has said does not consider North Korea's launch of short-range missiles, the first since he took office, as a provocation. Of course he doesn't. But do you really think Kim Jong-un is more respectful of Joe Biden than he was of Donald Trump? I very much doubt that, considering what Trump achieved with North Korea during his tenure. And if you actually believe that, you just want to believe it. That's the reality. It's like what Gord said earlier. You're choosing to be right first and letting the facts follow. So Joe Biden says it's not a problem that they're testing these short-range missiles. By the way, they agreed to stop doing that during Trump's administration. They have fired non-ballistic cruise missiles, which do not flout UN Security Council resolutions. They did that over the weekend. Biden's administration continues to attempt to establish diplomatic relations with North Korea, but they're not that keen because he liked the previous administration.
America aren't allowed to test their weapons, so surely North Korea shouldn't be allowed to. No, I'm well aware that they are, Gareth. That was called facetiousness. And I was using it to imply that America's like Harvey Weinstein going around and crapping on people like for being a little bit politically incorrect.
Oh.
Yeah, you know what, Gord? Not all nations are equal.
Yeah, not if one of them is in charge, no. Or 2 or 3.
Well, 2 or 3. Anyway.
China, Russia, and America, I think, have most of the say in what actually happens. And, obviously, like the sort of developed European countries have got some shit going on as well. They're super awesome, but there's like 14 of them in each country. There's like all 11 Belgian oaks are on a good mission, but the Russian Federation is voting for screw you. Have we lost our Gareth?
I was going to say, that was a good point, Gord, but then he just vanished into thin air.
We could just type the graphic if we could just type the graphic to say the Gord and Sia show quickly. Where are the tech people?
Are you thinking what I'm thinking?
Probably not, because we both get arrested.
We
So,
started
Sia,
speaking about North Korea, and then Gareth's gone.
what's going on in your fabulous life? I see that you've been rocking the short shorts. If social media is anything to go by, and this morning is the first morning, literally the first morning this year that I've woken up cold, except for that one day it was like really raining hard and had like this bizarre wintry cold front. But just in terms of like, firstly, this is the first morning. And bear in mind, I did the show last week. The week before, I've done I think 4 or 5 in a row after missing January and a little bit of February. So it's the first time I've woken up and it's dark. I mean, it wasn't now a bit dark. Last week it was day when I woke up, and today it was night. And also, like, I woke up cold. I'm wearing a hoodie. I mean, I literally haven't worn a hoodie since it was winter last. So shit be changing. The weather, seasons. What else can we talk about without Gareth? How are you?
No, I'm just concerned. Okay, so he does say that it's some connection issue and he's jumping back on now. As long as he hasn't been kidnapped or abducted by North Korea, then we're good, right?
Because, I mean, we were talking shit about North Korea. And even though it was me, it's the Gareth Cliff show, and they'll probably have his information on hand. So if some shit gets spoken about North Korea on the Gareth Cliff show, they're going to come for Gareth. I'm going to say disparaging shit about dangerous people and get Gareth killed. Oh, wait, he's back. We missed you, Gareth. Sorry, we were holding it down for you.
It sounds like you were being terrorists by the sound of things. All right, so just quickly.
We thought you were abducted there by North Korea.
Yeah, we thought the North Koreans got you hard and fast. We were like, shit, maybe we should have.
That was Kim Jong-un, sorry. I was about to do a like really stereotypical kind of racist accent, and he came in quickly and said, no, you're not going to get away with that. So,
thanks, world powers.
Managed to figure it out. Sorry, guys. All right, we got to take a break because it's already 7:00. We've been talking nonstop. We'd love to hear from you. You can get hold of us on 0797482090, and you could send us a message. You could also send us a message directly on YouTube or on cliffcentral.com. You can email us if you'd like to get hold of us that way. There's a bunch of different ways you can do this. Gord is here, Sia's here, I'm here, and you're here. That's all that matters this morning. We're going to talk a little bit about John Magufuli's funeral, which is just unbelievable. He's the president of Tanzania who died, and people are crying. It's like, funnily enough, in North Korea, where people cry when, something happens to the president. And I got a bunch of things to tell you, including like Rob Forbes had the most miserable, disappointing exit from radio that you've ever heard in your life yesterday. Someone sent me a screenshot of his leaving letter, which is just
I don't know who that is.
I'll explain. Don't you worry.
I'm excited.
We got to talk about women's sport because I think the news media in South Africa are trying their best to sell this to us, and nobody cares. I
just disassociate myself with that quickly for the record. We'll continue after the break.
for women's sport, but nobody cares, and we'll talk about.
Oh,
that.
You mean they're being underloved and underappreciated, and not like women's sports a bunch of bullshit?
It's pretty much both of those things. So we'll talk about it just now, and it's going to get a lot of people very fired up. So you're not going to have a boring half hour if you hang around with us for the next one.
Yay, politically divisive. We'll see you after the break.
We'll see you in a second. Stick around.
Political divisiveness. Yeah.
Very divisive stuff. All right,
4 more joints. I'll roll them now.
Oh my God, God, unbelievable.
Do you grunt when getting out of the car? Creak when getting out of bed? Do you walk into a room and forget why? Are you having trouble in the sack? Is the hump in a slump? Join me, Chris Evans-Smith, and Dr. Mark on the Tea Health Show every Wednesday morning, 9 a.m., where we talk to medical and allied professionals about those serious and not so serious medical lifestyle issues. The Tea Health Show, sponsored by the Tea Clinic. The Tea Health Show is available on podcasts. Subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen.
Just because it's about technology, connecting your business to the rest of the world doesn't mean you need to send rockets to space and use complicated solutions. Want to simplicate things? Well, join Jaco Voigt, who is the CEO of Catalytic, on the Unbundled podcast. With skin in the game and a keen focus on educating and assisting you and your business, Yaku decodes all the aspects of connectivity, security, and cloud solutions. Unbundled is brought to you by Catalytic and is available on cliffcentral.com, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts.
The world's apex predators have fearsome reputations, so it's hard to believe that some of them are facing a fight for survival.
In Gansbaai and Valsbaai, white sharks are almost completely disappeared.
Blind Conservation is the story of these endangered predators. In our first episodes, we speak to global experts about the alarming plight of the great white shark.
Each shark that lives out there, one day out of 4 days, it can be killed.
And what you can do to help one of nature's most magnificent creatures survive for future generations. Join me, Spike Ballantyne, and my co-host, Anthony Mederer, for Blind Conservation, available on cliffcentral.com, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts.
We live in a rapidly changing world, but how we get paid remains stubbornly outdated.
We have this archaic payday cycle.
The Future of Pay is a podcast series that explores the impact that the current salary status quo has on South Africans.
When you are desperate, you will do anything to get that money to put food on your table for your family by tomorrow evening.
And how innovative startup SmartWage is looking to change things.
There's a very simple problem here. People are waiting till the end of the month to get paid, and the impact is that they can't afford expenses that come up during the middle of the month.
The Future of Pay, brought to you by SmartWage, available on cliffcentral.com, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts. cliffcentral.com, what is it? It's a Wednesday morning. Gord Laws, Sia Sangweni, and I, along with you, on the 24th of March. What happened, Sia? Did you bump into something? Sia hadn't switched on his camera yet, and all we heard was him bump into something. What was that, your name?
I was running back because I could hear that the show started, and then I've just properly hit my whole foot against this table.
Shame, Sia. You must be careful of this. I mean, really, how old are you to still be bumping into things? Okay, it is. It's a busy day. We got Phil Kutzer joining us just now. There's loads of things on the agenda. I want to talk a little bit about women's sport because I've watched in the last 2 weeks essentially 2 whole sports bulletins that have been telling me that I need to care about women's cricket, women's rugby, and women's soccer.
Well,
and I'm
what
not
do you mean?
Well, so this was in the major news bulletin of one of the channels in South Africa, that all 3 of those are extremely important and I need to pay attention. Now, let me be fair. I don't even care about standard men's
Sports
rugby,
in general,
men's football, men's cricket. I don't give a shit about that stuff. I've never really been a big fan of sports, so I'm not the right target market for this. But I have to tell you, like, there's something so patronizing about the way that people are in the media. There seems to be this push to show that, there's this women's sport and it's so great, and they're interviewing like the captain of our cricket team, whose name I cannot tell you. Even though I'm not a sports fan, I can usually tell you the name of like the last rugby captain the Springboks had, or I can't tell you who this lady is, and I'm sure that she's really good at what she does. But nobody in the world.
It's got to start somewhere.
Yeah, I know, but
women's sport doesn't have the money, so they don't have the infrastructure and the participation uptake and the coaching and all of that the men's sports do. And then as a result, the quality is better. And
boring. It's boring to watch, but it's not as good. It's not as good.
If you look at how like the UFC just integrated women's MMA, I don't know, I'm guessing 10, 12 years ago, and initially it was like there was a big outcry. People didn't want it. Well, a lot of people didn't want it. They said it was subpar, and for a while it was. But I mean, now the top level women are, pound for pound, they'd kick the shit out of most men. So you've got like your Amanda Nunez's and your Rose Namajunas who are just and Joanna Jędrzejczyk, who are just as impressive martial artists as any man, and they make a lot of money pay-per-viewing their coolness.
Maybe. I mean, listen, again, I'm not the best person, but when I saw this on the TV news the other day, and I saw them like giving it a real push. They're like, women's sport is really great, and here's a women's cricket captain, and she's talking about how like they're going to face off against some other country's women's cricket team, and I was like, nah. Even if I was the kind of guy to be interested, it just feels like they're selling me something that's just not good. You know, if someone's trying
Weren't
to
they
sell you,
just reporting?
you know those little vacuum cleaners that go around the room on their own.
Roomba. I've always wanted one, even though I know it's going to be a piece of shit and it's going to knock my router and my power supply on the floor so they're not in a straight line, and I'll go crazy.
You want those things, even though it's a piece of crap. I don't. I just know it's not going to do the job, and I don't want to have one.
Battery can would murder it.
Why do you say women's sports isn't exciting?
It isn't. I have watched some, and it's just very. It's
I'm going to be in all these sound bites of your controversy.
I just have to say, like, there are obviously those standout people, and Gord, you mentioned them already. So in MMA, but I mean, there's Serena Williams, she's a fine tennis player to watch, and there's no way I can raise any.
Women's tennis is
plus
dope.
I know Ben, and I know Bulelo and Ben have spoken to me about this before, and they said you're an idiot because you're missing out. And probably they're right. I don't know that I'm the most well versed in this, but I will say, I will just say I think they're trying to sell me something. This is where I am good. I do understand a little bit of marketing. I might not understand sport, but it seems like they're trying to sell me a product that I don't really need.
Maybe they're just trying to build a brand from the ground up and are not especially efficient at it. I mean, you kind of answered the question that it's a little bit of both. Trying to get awareness onto something good, and also kind of trying to, I suppose, speak in a bit of a patronizing tone. But like women's tennis, as I said, MMA, there's in America, especially soccer. I mean, I think if you put the infrastructure in place, give the opportunity, and ultimately there are certain sports where it's a physical strength thing, but women can be in terms of skill and capability, like martial arts is a great example. Yes, they're smaller, so they fight each other at the same size. But in terms of being ninjas, women can be as ninja as any man, and the same with tennis. And golf's big with women.
You used one or two buts in that sentence, which means that you're trying to sell something too.
I'm trying to sell you women's MMA. It's cool.
Yeah, fine. Fine. Maybe I'll accept that I'm just not the target market. I just hate it when people are trying to sell me something because they've got an ideology, they've got an idea, they've got a particular agenda, and then they want me to conform to that agenda. It drives me crazy. So please, can we stop with?
Say, I'm very surprised by your opinion.
I don't know. Sometimes I watch this stuff and I'm like, just stop trying to oversell something to me. And I mean, here's Ntogozo who disagrees. He says he watched women's rugby in the Cape Town Sevens tournament in 2019, and he said he really enjoyed it. Women's sport is underrated.
It's a good example because I forgot about that. I was at the Sevens. I've been to all of them except one since they've been in Cape Town, and they included women's games in the last. It's also like it's a really high. For those who don't know Sevens, it's a short game, high pace, no real scrumming or mauling. It's basically just dudes. It's like touch rugby where you can tackle hard, and a really exciting game. And the women's games were really very good.
I'm surprised, Gareth, because you don't watch sport, don't care for sport like that.
No.
And then
but you do watch the Olympics when it happens, right?
No, well, no.
Okay, lots of people do that. They're not into sports.
So with you not caring about sport, why would this affect you so much? Or why would you...
Okay. It doesn't affect me so much. I just thought it was something interesting to discuss this morning. I'm not going to go on a crusade against women's sport here. That's not my intention. I just brought up that while I was watching two separate news bulletins on two separate days, they were trying to sell me how great this. One was women's rugby, the other one was women's cricket, and then there was also a story about women's soccer. And I just thought it was interesting that this is a priority thing on the agenda. They're telling you.
So it was glib and twee the way they spoke to you in a condescending way about something.
Yeah, I didn't like them overselling the thing. That's all I have to say about it. I don't
Are you aware just a tiny little bit that it does sound a bit backward?
Yeah, of course. But that's part of the reason we have this. We're allowed
we're
to
here to discuss things and have opinions and air our thoughts and figure it out together. And,
I'll just leave it alone because clearly, I'm not the intended audience for this particular new fad. It's just not something that's also I don't want to see women playing rugby. I don't. To me, that's why. There are
same reason men do.
I don't know. I don't even
thrill of smashing another human being at high speed.
Let's get into this.
Gareth, it sounds like you're going to say women must be in the kitchen making the sandwiches instead of playing.
Gareth didn't say that. Let us move along.
It sounds like.
I think I've made myself very clear on the gender equality page, and I've done enough to prove it too. Let's just go to this. So I don't know why, but this guy decided to pick a fight with me like a year ago or whatever. He's a like a daytime DJ on the station that I used to be on, 5FM, and I never had any beef with him. In fact, we got along pretty well when he was there and I was there at the same time. Anyway, it turns out that this is firing time and hiring time in radio, and someone forwarded me Rob Forbes's resignation, which is just, it's like, this has got to be one of the saddest things I've ever read in my life, and I thought I'd share it with you this morning. He says this is his resignation, right? Or either his resignation or they fired him. I don't know which one it is. He goes, "There is no next radio show plan. I have no new show lined up somewhere else. That was never the goal. Radio is one thing, and I'm far too interested in far too many things to make this the only thing. So this is my radio retirement too, for now. It is time to go and do the other things I have planned, and I'm really excited to finally be able to do so. Thanks for tuning in. It has been a pleasure." Now, you can read that literally, and you can say, okay, good, he's on his way out. Or you can say, wow, this guy really didn't have a plan. And he was just going to hang around in radio until they eventually did get rid of him, which is clearly what's happened. I think it's, it just sounds like this guy has nothing else to do, and I kind of feel a little bit sorry for him. So I wanted to read it out today and say, dude, I'm sorry it didn't work out for you. However many years you had, it's clearly this was not for you. You're just not competitive commercially, and nobody wants you. And I'm very sad for you on that.
Or maybe he just really does want to go and breed ducks on a duck breeding farm out in Nelspruit, and learn astronomy.
Sure, if you're good at those things.
Maybe he is.
Maybe he is.
I think cool. There's a time to move on. I mean, I kind of quit FHM in the same way. I was over the subject matter. I saw that the medium was declining, but I was also like, look, I can do this for another 10 years until it's so not working financially and industry-wise that I have to leave, or I can leave now while I'm on a reasonably good wicket and go do something else.
It's just like, it's a loserish, don't you think? I mean, like, you're not saying, this is we'll reunite again. I'll occasionally tweet something interesting, or don't worry, I'm not going away. This is like, well,
I don't know that I just took it as saying, don't worry, guys, I'm not leaving you for someone else. I'm leaving entirely. I don't know. I respect it. I think 5FM or SABC for an extended period of time. I'd also rather go breed ducks in Nelspruit.
Well, you're making a lot of assumptions that he's not including in his little resignation speech. I found it to be really lukewarm, really pathetic, really like nowhere. It's just not that's not something that you could respect. So I don't know how you get that, Gord.
In today's edition of DJ Beef, Gareth Cliff versus the Rob guy. MC DJ battle.
I have to say, I had no issue with this dude. You know this, Sia. I think he tweeted something about me like last year, or about podcasting being stupid or whatever. I was like, what are you?
The ENCA TV show.
There's back beef now. Now we're getting to it.
Right. It was about our ENCA TV show. I was like, what? You've never done any television in your life. You've never garnered an audience on radio, and now you're going to tell me that I shouldn't be doing this show. I mean, it's just unbelievable. So you can call me petty for bringing up his dumb resignation letter, but I think he started this one, and I'm not above being petty sometimes. I'm not above being a competitive man some of the time.
What I love about people saying whether or not,
for no reason. I do like a fight every now and then. It's important to me.
Being
but
petty
I
is
love it. I
good.
love it when people have an opinion on. Look, ENCA is a little different, but I'm talking about the podcast specifically. Like, Gareth shouldn't be having a podcast. He shouldn't say this. He shouldn't say that. Like, you're not mandated by anyone but yourself. You're not put in your position by the government. And if people hate you, they can bitch at the government until they cancel you. You're not mandated by DSTV, where it's like, we'll insist multi-choice get rid of you if you won't leave on your own. It's like, all you have to do to get rid of Gareth and his opinions you don't like is not click 3 links. They don't open on their own. So bugger off. But I mean, hey, if you've got beef with the DJ, I can't get involved. I don't know the guy.
Carl has some feedback for me. He says, you're coming off a little bitter with this thing. You keep saying people should leave the SABC. Now he does, and he's a loser. Well, we don't know if he left or if he was fired. That's not clear.
We don't know.
We don't know.
Sounded pretty leavy to me.
But here's an interesting point. Gord, are you already baked and it isn't 8 a.m.?
Have you not been paying attention? This has been going on throughout the show.
But Gord, let me ask you something. Do you do this just because of the show? I mean, do you light up just because you're on the show, or is this your standard morning routine?
Well, I go through phases where I smoke more or less or not at all. So I'm not going to pretend I haven't been smoking outside of the show, but it's my excuse to wake and partake, because it really disrupts my day doing the show. I'm just one of those people that doesn't go to sleep 2 hours earlier to get up 2 hours earlier. So it's like, I try to keep when
you're not listening to me. How many joints have you had so far, and is this a normal daily routine for you?
No, to start this early definitely isn't. And I think I've just started the 3rd one. But
Jesus.
I keep Wednesdays clear for like shop admin missions and stuff that's low mind, high admin. So I try to avoid important meetings and all of that workday stuff. And then there's days where I can't make the show because I can't afford to get up 2 hours early and talk shit when I've got a lot of work to do. And that's why people know that I cancel sometimes. But on a Wednesday morning, I get up heinously early. I drag my tired ass out of bed. I brush my teeth.
And we appreciate
roll a joint, and I sit my ass down and I talk some shit while smoking. But no, I don't smoke at 6 a.m. every day by any means.
We like that.
There's this pseudo something that happens every time I see you smoke that I almost like can smell it. I can feel it. It's just ugh.
Do you know, Gord, I have only a few friends who smoke weed, but I respect their right to do that, and I have no problem with weed myself. And I think the effects of weed on society are probably a lot better than the effects of things like alcohol, which I am a proponent of. So I'm not going to, this is not some big drug conversation, but that smell, dude, I've never ever got used to the smell. And people
it goes away when you do get used to it. That's the thing.
People tell me there are like different variations of smell, but to me, it always smells horrible.
I can tell you if it's an indica or sativa or something not too remarkable just by walking past.
Really?
It's like wine. I mean, some have clearly different distinctive smells. You can tell it's definitely not one of these, and it's probably one of those. Maybe not narrow it down to the exact type, but if you know wine, you'll be able to put it in a category just by smelling it. And then if you want to further analyze and differentiate, you need to partake of some and compare. But yeah, you can tell if it's good or bad easily. You can tell that immediately where on the spectrum of shit and good it is. And you can usually tell whether it's a sativa plant or an indica plant. And people who say they can pick out the strain by walking past a neighbor's window who's smoking, I think you may be overrating your ability to differentiate. But there's for sure a difference, 100%.
What about this? Kelly says, Gord, you were saying for the longest time that weed wasn't your thing anymore.
Good question. So for the first time in my life, since I went keto 7 months ago and have lost about 75 kilos, for the very first time in my life, a whole lot of other things have happened. And I'm not for a second trying to suggest that smoking weed's now good for you and everyone should do it to cure your glaucoma. In terms of productivity and overall well-being, it's not a positive, right? But I also don't think it's terribly destructive. But what it would do to me is it would take my eating disorder and make it uncontrollable. Then I'm enjoying smoking weed, which I always have, but I'm anxious about how I'm eating even more, and I'm aware of it and gaining weight. And then you become depressed about that, and then you're smoking when you're depressed. That you don't want. So
we had
the first time in my life, it doesn't affect my eating, and I'm really enjoying smoking if it doesn't mean every joint I have equals 4,000 extra calories.
Well, dude, first of all, that's incredible that you've lost 75 kilos?
Estimated. It could be more, but it's at least 70, yeah.
I'm really, like, I know you specially asked not to make a thing of this until you've got to the weight that you want to get to, and I understand that. But I just got to tell you, man, that's like almost 2 sears.
Yeah, I mean, look, you can get as much congratulations as you want, but when you know that the minimum, you don't know how heavy you got, but you know it was at least 210 kilos. It's like you've cleaned up quite a lot of spilt milk that you spilt yourself. But I also have learned a lot about this that I don't want to really discuss until I've gotten through it and figured it out about the psychological aspects. I've done tours of Nam before. This is very different. This is like patience. It's easy. You just have to be patient. So it's a very different energy. And also, my weight issue is the reason why I end up having to quit weed. It's having an adverse effect on my health and my mental. So I should quit at some point, but the fact that it's not affecting my well-being in terms of happiness and focus is just great. 20 years of smoking weed on and off, and this is the first time I don't have the major downfall, the negative aspect of that.
It's amazing that you've done that. Congrats, dude.
Thanks, man.
It's really impressive. And I'm, there's a lot of people would say, oh, well done, Gord, and you've lost the weight. But I know what a struggle it's been for you, and I know how you go up and down. And these things are behavioral largely. But if you found a way to kind of have what you want and smoke the weed and be able to control the weight, that's just tremendous. I mean, thank God, right? I mean, we all figure out different things about our body's ability to regulate things.
Waking up, dude, from just changing my diet, right? Like, forget the weight stuff. Like, I wake up at 7 every day, whether I want to or not. And I have to manage my going to bed because I can't get in that extra hour or 2 if I've gone to bed. And usually that's work. Usually I get stuck into something late and suddenly it's 1:32 and I go to bed. I wake up. This has never been the case. I've always been, since a child, one of those people who's really hard to go to sleep. And I'm like a 3 alarm clock coming out of anesthetic person. And now I'm just like, I'm wide awake. It must look 7:04, and now no going back to sleep. And it's great, but it's like different.
Why are you looking so concerned?
It is just, it's just not for me. And so I struggle to figure out how you can cope and you can smoke and you can drive and have a productive day with it. To each their own, really. But I can't get it.
I'm blessed with a couple of best friends, but one of the real candidates for best friend of all time passed away when I was 24. And it was like, now I just mourn for people who didn't get to know him. But my boy Bundy and I were big into smoking and hip hop. And there's a lyric from a Method Man song that says, "Hey kid, walk straight, master your high." And our belief was always, even in our early 20s, that if you're going to smoke, don't walk around looking like you don't know where you are, bleeding eyes, haven't brushed your teeth or hair for some reason, and go be gross around the mall. Smoke and carry on.
Gordo, is that the friend of yours? Because I saw you post something probably on Instagram a couple of days ago about this friend of yours. What happened to him?
My boy Stephen Bundy Bundred. He was my best mate for 14 years, and I was a year older than him. So I was 24. He was about to turn 23, or he just turned 23. I mean, maths this little, but he was 23.
Yeah.
Along with another one of our very close friends, Darren McGill. They were, after we all got drunk at a, what's that, like Dross or Keg or whatever there by Billy the Bums. We were there, and I actually missed the jaw. And when the jaw ended and they closed the place, everyone went home, and a couple of guys wanted to go and continue partying. And they hit a pavement going way too fast on Louis Botha, and then the car went upright and flew it through a bus stop and into a traffic light or a street pole. So that was like one of the great traumas of my young life, and we all got, me and a massive group of friends, all got a bunch of tattoos out of it. I got another one on the 10-year anniversary. But yeah, we used to grow and smoke spliff, and he was my boy, Stephen Bundy. We'll never forget him. And Darren McGill, both good dudes. Yeah, losing 2 close friends at a time is seriously hectic. And then in my friend group as well, in the rock and roll community, we had a week where we lost 3 people separately from each other. And the one dude was supposed to be the pallbearer at the second dude's funeral. And between the guy dying and the funeral, so there was a missing pallbearer. It was like, I've lost a lot of friends, but I guess it's a side effect of having a lot of friends, which is a great blessing. But yeah, losing your best friend when you're 24 will take it out of you. Thankfully, I've got other best friends, 2 or 3, that are the best a guy could ever ask for.
I want to just show you something quickly, because I think you'll love this, Gord. It's come up so many times when you've been on the show. There's a story in the news. Woman feels discriminated by KFC over lack of meat-free options. Okay, so she goes to KFC.
Goes to the restaurant that has chicken in its name.
So here it is. I know you're going to get really upset by this, but this is brilliant. So someone comments on this, on the story, and this is where I love the internet. You know, because sometimes you hate the internet, but this is where you love it. So here's someone's reply to the story about this woman who feels discriminated against by KFC because they don't have enough meat-free options. Okay? This person says, I completely sympathize. The other day, I went to World of Carpet to buy a new telescope, but was astounded and disgusted at the complete lack of optical equipment.
World of Carpet.
It's almost as if they purposely set out to satisfy the needs of carpet buyers, but deliberately snubbed those who weren't. Utter madness.
I hate that. Carpet world really just don't have any. They don't give a shit about anyone except people who like carpets. It's disgusting.
That is the best response I've seen in a very long time.
But I like the memes where it's somebody's stupid statement and then a funny comment underneath. Like those are usually. And you always wonder if that was really posted and someone screen grabbed it or if they like made it.
Like I've got an agenda here, and the agenda is that I know we've spoken about this a million times, but it is amazing to me how people go onto the internet or they go into their real lives and they want everything in their universe tailored to their particular needs. People must just know that that is what you want and that they should be catering to you. It's got nothing to do with your ability to discern where you are going to find what you need. It's got everything to do with everyone else in the world laying out the red carpet for you. And I do think that this is something that many people still labor under the misapprehension of every single day. It's just incredible. What did you say, Gord? You're on mute.
Shit, sorry. It's a massive assumption that I'm making because I don't know anything about the story except what you've just told me. And to divorce it from the whole meat versus non-meat thing, which then becomes a religious debate where no one can ever be wrong. But like this entitlement issue of like a business chain, the brick and mortar stores, the signage, the brand, the advertising, the product, everything has nothing to do with me. It was here before I was born. It'll be here after I die. They'll never know my name. Right. But I expect this world that has independently sprung up like flowers with buildings and businesses and services to cater so specifically to my need that the chicken restaurant, should I happen to be in that place at that time and need food, is on standby with what suits me. That's a mindset that can go to complaining about your show when you have if you're never forced to listen to it, all of that sort of shit. It comes from auto-write.
I think this is a syndrome. I really do believe that this is something that's going on in the universe at the moment that we need to be aware of, because I see it more and more. I see people who demand that they get the course of their dreams in, let's say, snail genetics, and they want it in isiXhosa because that's their language, and they want to study it at the university that must be 5 kilometers up the road from their house because that's convenient to them, and it better happen yesterday. People want everything in the universe because we live in a consumer culture and we've all been raised with this customer is king nonsense. We think that we are entitled to everything that our hearts desire, and it's
in some cases, and
not a world that we live in.
It takes away from issues like, I mean, education in isiXhosa is probably massively underrepresented, but that example aside, it takes away from the real issues where something does need to be done about something that isn't fair because everyone just complains about whatever they don't like about how other people are doing their shit.
No, my example stands. Like, you cannot have everything tailored particularly to your purpose and to your desire. It's just, that's why I loved this story. And I thought, if there's some vegan running around and she's upset about KFC not offering more meat-free options, then it's not KFC that's the problem, honey. It is you.
Go to Pizza Perfect and you're terribly upset they don't have hamburgers, although they probably do at Pizza Perfect. Bad example.
This is the point, right? Like, people do want this. They want everything they want now, and no one else can tell them what to do. All right, let's welcome Phil. Phil, are you there? There he is. There's Phil Kutzer. That's a nice looking office, dude. Are you at the office or at home?
No, I'm at home. How's it, guys? Morning, Sam. Morning.
Hey, Phil. Is that a picture of Johnny Clegg behind you? Can you just do a shoulder shift? Oh, you got to go the other way. What a legend,
so
man.
Cool.
Champion of a legend.
Hey, by the way, speaking of Johnny Clegg, everybody, I saw Jesse Clegg had a little baby.
Muzzle.
Right, yes.
him and his lady Danny, and like, I think they kept it a little bit quiet, but I'm so stoked for them, and what a brilliant bunch of people, the whole Clegg family. Johnny, I was blessed to meet him a couple of times, and Jesse I know, and that's an example of family raised right. And young Jaron, they're great.
Yeah, they're awesome people. So listen, a new addition to the Clegg family, and then Phil's got a big painting of Johnny in the background, which is awesome. So Phil, how's Ermelo? First of all, we haven't checked in with you for a while. People were starting to think that we weren't talking to each other. What's going on, man?
Yeah. No, thanks, Gareth. Yeah, everything is going well, I think. I think the last time we spoke was, I think, around about the beginning of November, if I...
Well, we tried to talk to you. We tried to talk to you like a month ago, but you had... It wasn't COVID, was it? Did you have COVID, or were you... What was it?
No, it was just man flu.
It's the most bizarre thing getting sick during COVID, because you're feeling, even if it's a mild cold or proper flu, you're feeling feelings you've felt many times before. And like every cold or flu you've ever had in your life up to that point, it's probably not COVID. But until you have Schrodinger's COVID, or Schrovid as I call it, where until you get the test result, you're in a state of both COVID and non-COVID. So it's odd when you're sick and then it turns out not to be COVID. I've had it once. It's good, but it's like almost disappointing. Like, I've been through all this snot and coughing and shit, and I don't have any immunity. Anyway, let's get back to the topic at hand. Gareth is frozen permanently in a gigantic
I was going to say.
That or Medusa walked into his office.
Frozen.
So you got a bit sick there, Phil. What was the story?
No, it was just... normal flu. I got tested, but it's just negative. But
did they pull it out of your soul via your nostril?
No. I have to pay them extra to do the throat one, because I just can't do it anymore. I think I have 5 or 6
in your nose, through your eye, and into your brain.
No. Sounds horrible. All right, so Phil, we've got a very specific bunch of questions that people want answered, and I thought you're the best guy to help us figure this stuff out, right?
Sure.
First of all, I mean, we've had such a crazy year last year, and you and I met during lockdown last year, and I've really enjoyed the experience of kind of driving these different cars, because what the hell do I know about cars? You're educating me from the ground up. But I'm interested in generally whether people are upgrading or downgrading at the moment, because they're driving a lot less, right?
Sure. It's true. That's true. I mean, I think the majority of people are downgrading vehicles. I mean, if you're talking about downgrading or driving less.
Well, I think that a lot of people, because they're driving less, they probably think, well, why should I be driving the fancy show-off car that I was driving before, or maybe the one that I needed to be more comfortable because I was on the road for like 2 hours a day, and now they're on the road for 30 minutes a day, and they're like, you know what? I could probably do this in a little Hyundai or something, rather than worry about a more expensive Merc.
Well, I think it goes 2 ways. I mean, if you've put on a lot of less mileage last year, I mean, you're probably going to keep your vehicle longer because you just didn't do the mileage you used to do. So that's one side of it, and then the other side is obviously true what you said. I mean, if you don't need a vehicle to travel that much, why get something expensive with a huge monthly installment? Rather get something smaller and just get an A to B. So yeah, that's true.
Well, are dealers having a rough time at the moment, or are you guys in general? Did you speak?
I think national, or if you took all the brands together, I mean, I think we're a little bit like something around about 10% down year to date, or year to year. If you measure February to February. So it's not that much of a difference, but I mean, it's very brand specific. So I mean, from a affordability, a vehicle like your Toyotas, Hyundais, and so forth, they're still doing well, and some of them are just going up. Your luxury vehicles are your Mercedes, BMW, Audi, significantly went down in numbers. So yeah, I mean, so the majority of people are downgrading, I believe. But it's interesting enough, your top earners will always be there, and they will always be buying. So when I say top earners, I mean, I'm saying vehicle prices of 1.8 and up. Those guys will just be there forever.
If you've got a 1.7 million rand car, you're not a top earner.
I'm saying,
or just all right. It's like, wow, from starting at 1.8 million rand, you could be a top earner. So if you got the 1.9 million rand car, you literally park in the far part of the parking lot in top earner.
No, the reason why I said 1.8 was, I mean, your GLE, for instance, your GLE 400, that goes for around about 1.8 now. So that was the cutoff point.
That's
I was
the
using.
benchmark.
Yeah, but I'll pull you through on 1.7. We can make a deal.
Thanks. Yeah, 1.75 max. I just can't go all the way to 8.
So let me ask you this, because again, like you guys at DeWitt Motors, you don't just have Mercedes, even though that's kind of your flagship stuff, but you actually sell a whole bunch of different cars, right?
Yes, yeah, we'll do Hyundai as well, and Mitsubishi, and then obviously the commercial side as well, trucks and buses and sprinters and so forth. Yeah.
What are your roads like in Ermelo? Have you guys got a lot of potholes, or are they?
No, it's an absolute mess. Yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's getting worse and worse as well. So that's a good point. I mean, obviously, so I mean, we don't sell sedans anymore. I mean, everything we sell is either a mini SUV, medium SUV size, or big SUV, because you can't drive a sedan with small tires anymore. I mean, around town or in town. So
you sell all over the country, so you probably can get customers who are buying from you in Cape Town or whatever. It's not just.
I want to ask you if that's a literal direct product of potholes, because for me it's like more of a family thing. Like, people graduate from a small 1 or 2 person car that's quite practical, and then suddenly the next step is needing it for kids. So you get this upgrading to an SUV. Some people just like them because they're safe and big, I guess. But like, is there a correlation between an area's roads deteriorating and fewer people buying sedans? Because that's very interesting.
Absolutely. I mean, if I compare my numbers to a city dealer, I mean, they sell way more sedans, your A classes, C classes, C coupes than we do. I mean, everything we sell on the Mercedes-Benz side, starts with a G, GLA, GLB, GLC, which is all SUV vehicles. So it's definitely that way. Yeah.
And those people, you said, they're still in the market. They still like buying new cars. That's not going to change. It's like your top cream of the cream people who going to spend money on the car.
It's interesting. I mean, I think me and you had this chat. Our most expensive SUV at the moment is the G-Wagon, your G63.
Right.
It's going for 3.7, and that sells like donuts at the moment. I mean, if you get 3, you'll sell them in the next day. All 3 will be gone.
3.7. And tell me, Phil, do they? Is that where they start? And if you want like the tinted sunroof, like, is 3.7 the big daddy / mommy, non-gender descript patriarch?
The G63s are quite fully loaded, so there's not a lot of extras you can add.
Because for my 3.7 million, I mean, I know I said I was going to stop at 1.8, but you're talking it up, and I can go to 3.7, but I don't want to have to pay for bigger mags or a special seat. You can squeeze out a bit more. You're throwing in some things, and you got a deal. I'm buying it, but I'm not paying for any extras.
Okay, cool.
We'll talk after. Thanks, dude.
We'll talk after. It's shot, man. Yeah.
That's incredible. So I can't help it. I went and had a look, and apparently you've got a Ferrari FF listed there on your site.
Oh, yes, yeah. The Ferrari was, we didn't trade a Ferrari in. I mean, we had this one customer who just liked to sell his car, and we offered to try and sell it for him. So I actually should take it down because I think it has been sold. So yeah, thank you.
That can't be. Is that an easy thing to sell? You take on an exotic, really expensive Ferrari. Do you think, okay, we got our work cut out for us, but it's going to be worth it? Or do you go, this guy needs help selling it. That's a cash in. Let's help him.
You see, Ferrari is a little bit different for the Ermelo market. I mean, it's once again, it's a sedan and not an SUV. Potholes. And
that's why I don't have a Ferrari.
That's the only reason.
Where can I drive it? I mean, I'd have to put it on a tow thing, take it to the track. I'd already do that with my Bugatti. No.
But yeah, I mean, if you use Auto Trader, what we use, obviously you can advertise nationally, and then I mean, everybody can see it. You can see it in your office where you're sitting in Pretoria. So I mean, if you're in the market and the price is right, I mean, there's a price for every car. I mean, either if it's 2 million, 3 million, 4 million, it's all relative. So at the end of the day,
may I ask what the Ferrari went for?
Gord, I can't remember. I mean, Gareth, what was the price there on the?
I don't know, but it was.
I think it was around about 3 million, right about there, if I can remember correctly. Yeah.
So, all right, let's just talk about what I'm driving at the moment, because I'm getting a whole bunch of. This is the first time that I've driven a Japanese car ever in my life, and part of the reason that we're doing this thing with Phil and David Motors is because I don't know a lot about cars. So the only way I'm going to discover a lot about cars is if I drive them. So I've driven a Merc, I've driven the Bucky for a while. I've driven a bunch of different cars, and this is the first time I've had a Japanese one. So it took me a while to get used to the indicator being on the opposite side to the windscreen wipers. I still switch on the windscreen wipers when I turn instead of the indicator.
Think about that.
It takes so long to get used to. It takes I still do it. I've been driving my first indicator on the right car that I've ever had for 2.5, 3 years, and still always put the windscreen wiper on.
But this is the short wheelbase Pajero, and it's it's a really nice car. I can't figure out whether I want the back seats down or up, because the only passenger in my car is usually my dog, and he's now sitting on the front seat. So
you know what I did? I took mine out.
Oh, you take them out completely?
Exactly, yeah. Because I'm also driving one, so yeah, I just took it out completely, yeah.
There's a lot of space when you take those back seats out. Hey? That's a huge boot. I mean, like you could fit. It's monstrous.
Exactly. I mean, so it's like a short wheelbase. Yeah.
Sorry. Say that again, Phil. What was that?
No, I mean, if you're taking the seats out, it's like a short wheelbase Bucky. You know, I mean, out of space, and that's what I did. So yeah, that's an option, because I didn't like the seats either. I mean, it takes a lot of the space back in the boot even if you take them down. Yeah.
I did have Sia as a passenger in that car a little while ago when we went to Constitution Hill, and there were 3 of us in the car. So Sia sat in the back, and he didn't complain. He wasn't moaning. So there is space when you've got those seats up as well, and there's still a little bit, you know.
That's right.
I'm hearing you guys using this term. What does it mean? What does short wheel mean?
Short wheel.
Short wheelbase.
Yeah, there are just 2 versions. There's a long one and a short one. So the other one is the bigger one is a 7-seater or 5-seater with 2 seats that fold back in the boots, and this is just a shorter one. Yeah.
Yeah. So if you look at the car from the side, and you can see, I don't know, it's so hard with this mirror thing. You can see how far apart from each other the 2 wheels are. They make one that's got that much, and then they decide they want a longer one, so they literally move the wheels further apart, and you've got a bit more car in the middle. So that's why you get longer and shorter, but it affects the handling and a couple of other things as well. So some people buy it for the space, they want the longer one, and other people buy it because it drives differently.
That is the best explanation. You know what? Can I tell you something? Gord just explained short wheelbase to Sia better than I ever could. Well done.
So you'll get the ordinary one, and then some people will want the short wheelbase one.
So listen, the thing about these Japanese cars, they're actually pretty damn reliable. I mean, I think there are, if you consider how many people, and I see a lot of Pajeros now that I'm driving one, I see a lot of them all over the place. A nice car, it's very economical. This one's a diesel, so it seems to give me quite a lot of range. And even though, as I said, I'm driving a lot less than usual, it's a hell of a nice car inside.
And diesel's clean these days.
It is.
It's really good.
It's like a very straightforward thing to drive. It's not complicated at all. Would you agree with that, Phil?
Yeah, sure. I mean, going back to what Gord mentioned on extras, for instance. I mean, these you get a Pajero 3.2 diesel short wheelbase. There's only one model. There's only the one you're driving is as it is. I mean, you can't spec it otherwise. There's not a manual or a petrol or anything else. I mean, there's just one model. There are no optional extras. That's how it is. So as it is, it comes out standard. Yeah.
And haven't they stopped making these or something? There are only a few left available for
That's
sale.
right. Yeah. I mean, that was one of the reasons I borrowed to you, because I mean, I don't think we'll ever get the chance again. Because I mean, I think in the next week or so, the ship will dock, and then Pajeros will be finished until the end of days. So, yeah.
And then that's it, right? They're not making any more of these anywhere.
Exactly. Yeah. These are literally the last bunch that we've got. So I mean, we ordered a couple for stock reasons, and obviously it's a supply and demand thing. As soon as the last one has been sold, it probably, in my view, it will become some of a, an icon or so for future purposes.
I said it's a straightforward thing to drive, and I want to ask you a general question here, because I wonder how many people are driving four-wheel drive cars in South Africa and don't actually know how to use them. It's got it's got two gear levers effectively. The one gives you two-wheel or four-wheel, rear or front. And most people, including me, don't know what the hell that is. I mean, most people have it in their car. It's an incredible mechanical and technological advancement. And because they're not driving through, dry riverbeds and on obstacle courses, they don't ever really get to exercise that stuff. Do you think
I didn't actually even know that the Pajero is a full function four-wheel drive. I thought it was one of those nice, safe, family, comfortable SUVs for Sant and Sharons and potholes.
No, dude, you can engage this four-wheel drive, and it's quite an incredible thing. But do you think most people even know how to use that, Phil?
I think it depends where you stay. I mean, you should have seen how it looked here after Eloise, Cyclone Eloise, beginning of end of January. So I mean, if you didn't have 4x4 here and you were staying on a farm, you were screwed. I mean, you were stuck on your farm. So I mean, and everybody knows.
Phil sent me pictures of flood.
Oh, on the Vaal.
Phil sent me pictures of this flood. Yeah, geez, man. So apparently, did you know, Gord, Phil's full of information. The Vaal River actually starts in Ermelo.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh,
I would have thought it would have started in Irma High and then flowed downhill.
Okay.
Irma
High. I got Gareth at least once on the show.
Right. It's a dumb joke, but I just love that.
It's terrible, I know.
All right, just quickly, because we are running out of time here, and I there's so much I want to ask you. So let me get straight to the point. There are people who are thinking of buying new cars now, and there are people who are thinking of buying used cars right now. Give them advice, not as the car dealer now, but as someone who, like, imagine I'm your friend and I need advice from you. Would now be the right time? What would you advise? Let's say my budget is X or Y. So give us two options. Give us like someone like Gord who has millions of rands and wants to buy the G-Wagon with
millions,
all the
2 or 3. You make out like I'm being wasteful.
And then give us someone who's, like Sia has to buy another car because his car has been written off. Is it being written off, Sia? Is that the story?
Yeah. So
did you parallel park
technically? Yes, Gord, that's what happened. So technically, I am on the market now.
No. So give
in more
one
ways
piece
than
of advice
one.
to Sia and a different piece of advice to Gord.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, sorry, Sia, that's bad news. Sorry to hear about it. Well, I think usually the first question we will ask you is more or less what you'd like to spend, either on a cash payment or monthly installment wise. A quick or easy way to work it out is for every 50,000 that you finance, you will pay 1,000 rand a month. Okay, so if your vehicle is worth 100,000 or you finance 100,000, your installment will be 2 grand a month. Okay, if your vehicle is you buy it for 400,000, your installment will be 8,000. So that's more or less a way of working out what you would like to spend per month or so.
Okay.
Then, so we can chat afterwards, and I'll give you a couple of options and see what we can do, what you had before, what you would like now, what didn't you like in your previous car, what would you like in your next car, and so on.
I'm interested to know. Sorry, Phil. I'm interested to know because it actually applies to me directly. I've got a Toyota, and it's like, as Gareth mentioned, it's very reliable, but it's an Aurus, and there's really nothing I like about it. It's the most vanilla car in the world, and I also bought it from someone I'm not particularly fond of. But I paid 125k for it when it was 7 years old, and I've had it for 3 years. It's now 10 years old, and I'd like to sort of side trade it for something of similar value that's just not this car. But I wonder, like, at this time, if I feel I'm going to lose a lot of equity on the car, and it's going to cost me a lot of money to side grade. At this time, I won't get the value of the car to me out of it by selling it because it's a shit market, right?
I don't think so. I don't think it's a bad market at all. I mean, at the moment, if we take new vehicle prices, I mean, in the last year, if we take the last 18 months, I mean, most of the manufacturers have had a price increase of almost 25%. So,
Phil, if you want a white Toyota Auris with no personality, but it's reliable as shit, you can give me anything you want for it.
Okay.
Give me a bicycle with a small motor, and you can have an Auris. I'll talk to you after the show.
You will sell your vehicle in 5 seconds, I promise you. I mean, there will always be a market for that car. Absolutely. I mean, you can just imagine.
Let's press go on that.
Yeah.
I'll WhatsApp you some photos after the show.
No worries. Yeah. But then we need to see what we're going to replace you with. And I mean, the one side is you will get more for your car, but the other side is, I mean, you're going to pay more for a new car.
Give me that McGann that people keep selling to other people because it never works. I'll take it.
Well, listen, I mean, it sounds to me like my question and advice has probably brought you 2 new sales this morning. This is good news.
Jokes aside, it's a question I've been wondering about. It doesn't bother me enough, especially since I drive once or twice a week now, that it's like on my mind to make a plan about it. And I've got this perceived, look, it's probably not a good time anyway, and who really cares? Like I said, if I can get something just similar, not even an upgrade or a downgrade, without having to pay in too much, I'm your guy. And I'm glad to know that that's a feasible option, because now I'm going to do it.
Yeah. No, I mean, let's start with a quote. That's the easiest way. And then, I mean, we can take it there, and then we can see we can go up and down and see what's going to work for you. Yeah. Awesome. Easy.
I love it.
So the answer is contact Phil if you don't know what to do.
So listen, while we're doing that, you can follow all of the Divot Motors social media accounts. You'll find them on Instagram. You'll also find a picture there of the Pajero that I'm driving at the moment, which is awesome. And you can ask Phil directly if you have any questions. He's the guy to talk to. He's in charge there. And, you know, if anyone can make it work, it's him. That's
Dr. Phil.
DE, exactly. DE and space WIT Motors. And we'll put all the different links on cliffcentral.com. after this podcast. So, all right, Phil, very good to see you, dude.
Yeah, same here, guys. Yeah, thank you very much.
Yeah, try not to get the COVID again.
I will not, thanks.
And for all of your short wheel-based and long wheel-based vehicle inquiries, you're the guy.
That's right. There we go. Like, how did Gord do it? Like this and like that. We've learned something new this morning.
Thanks, guys.
In sign language, this is short wheelbase car, and that's long wheelbase car.
Cheers, Phil. Cheers, there he is. Gord,
I so badly wanted to break out in song and go, it's the last Pajero, and there's reason to believe maybe this one that is leaving is the
last. Gord, we get this from Tabo this morning, which I think you'd appreciate. Tabo says, I'm here just for the BDC. You know what that
I still think bunny distraction centers are immoral, unethical, archaic, and should be done away with. Big Bunny tells you that they're actually painless, but that's because they make so much money from bunny pelts.
Bunny distraction centers is what a BDC is. A bunny distraction center, something
automated bunny distraction.
Okay.
This shit goes on, and people are blissfully unaware of it. You don't know how your cows are farmed. You don't know how your bunny pelts are distracted.
Thank you for showing us the light.
Distract them in a rolling pin way so that the meat shoots out one end and the pelt remains on the other, and it's really horrible.
The meat shoots out. Ew.
Yeah, debones, demeats, and pelts in one go, but the poor rabbit has to be rolled. Gareth. Yeah, it's the little things there.
It's such a horrible thing to talk about. Oh my god. All right, very good.
So for those people who know what we're talking about, we got onto a cuck talking tangent a couple of shows ago about bunny distraction, because Gareth has bunnies that get massacred at his estate. And one of our listeners drew a really cool machine of a bunny distraction machine. It was funny as hell. So if you think we're entirely on crack, not entirely.
Oh my gosh, but we didn't get to your Justice League 4-hour movie point.
We've got like 3.5 minutes here. So just quickly, my 2 questions about Justice League, because, that's a good point. So Justice League is the movie that Gord says is out now, and it's DC Comics, and it's their chance to kind of make up for all the terrible movies that they've made. But why is it necessary? Why does Superman need to team up with anybody if he's Superman? He can do anything already. Why does he need Batman? Batman's just a normal dude with, like, gadgets.
Well, because it's not all just about
Batman?
your capabilities. It's not all just about your capabilities. Like Superman can't be in multiple places at once. He can't necessarily not be deceived by Luthor's evil plan. But the main reason for it is exactly identical to the Avengers. You take all these individual franchises, you build them, you put them together, it's a big finale. But they just did everything about it badly. Except for the first Wonder Woman, I don't think DC have done a good movie. I didn't even watch Aquaman, and I like this shit. I didn't watch the Justice League because I knew what happened with it. Look, why Zack Snyder left and the studio took over is kind of shrouded, and they seem to have come to some sort of, they obviously don't hate each other because they've now recollaborated. But what happens here is that Zack Snyder was making the Justice League movie, and the story was set, and everything that was going to happen was decided, and it wasn't going well, and the studio was making changes, and Zack Snyder left. They then reshot whole parts of the movie. That's why Henry Cavill had that. It's Cavill, not Cahill, eh? Yeah,
Cavill.
He had that CGI moustache in the scenes because he had done the movie, gone to do Mission Impossible, had it in his contract he had to have a moustache, so they CGI'd it out and had this terrible, half the Superman scenes he's got this terrible CGI moustache being done out, and they changed the story, they took out the main bad guy and made his henchman the bad guy, and it was just a mess and it was total shit. But they shot so much that the original stuff is still there and just needed some more special effects and a couple of extra things shot. The public kept saying, release the Snyder Cut. Like, this thing was crap, but we know it had potential to be good. So then they couldn't figure out whether to make it like 5 one-hour episodes or cut it down and somehow get it under 3 hours. And they thought, well, it's a special project anyway, so it's just 1 4-hour movie. But I mean, a lot of my friends have watched half of it and then watched half of it. They don't normally aim to make this 4 hours. But it's a completely different story, and it's very dark, which I think was the studio's problem with it to begin with. But DC's supposed to be dark. That's why they're different than Marvel. And I haven't actually watched it. I haven't had 4 hours yet, but I've got it. And people are raving about it.
Who's the bad guy?
Oh, God, what's his name, man? Darkseid. Darkseid.
Darkseid or Darkseid?
Darkseid, SEID. So he's sent big scary thing with horns ahead of him as a henchman to go and kick ass, and ultimately he's the bad guy, and they just removed him. They were like, big ugly scary demon looking oak with a hammer will do. Looking for the boxes of power for no real reason except that they're cool MacGuffins, whereas with Darkseid it's about like he needs them to take over the universe.
Oh.
But it's
I'm still
like
hung up on
Cyborg didn't make sense in Justice League. I mean, I watched like the first half an hour of it. His story like was patchy, but it's all just because it was a re-edit to make a new story. It's like Robotech. They took one thing and tried to cut it into something else.
Ruth says Steppenwolf is the other guy.
That's right. Yeah, and he's meant to be in it as like a henchman.
Okay, and then Karen says Batman just has a lot of issues. Did he go for counseling at some point? Well, didn't the story with Batman is like his parents were killed, right? So that's why he's the way he is.
And you saw the police didn't do anything about it, so justice became his job.
I can't believe we're adult men talking about this stuff as if it's real. Thanks very much.
Says the Oak who's always happy to talk about Star Wars, which is wizards in wizard in space.
Oh.
No, I'm being sarcastic. You remember that word facetious that you brought up?
You care a lot about Star Wars. You can bullshit as much as you like.
I do like Star Wars. I'm denying what you think. I'm not denying. I'm saying I'm into it just like you are. That's why I'm making fun of it.
Yeah, this is the same crap. It's just a different flavor.
Totally.
But
I love it.
But Star Wars is good, not debatable later on, but the Star Wars movies are brilliant. The DC movies have just been shite. And I've never seen a worse. Only Anchorman and Kingsman 2. Anchorman 2 and Kingsman 2 are more disappointing sequels than Wonder Woman 1984. Like, that is just absolute garbage. It's worth watching just to see how bad it is. Like, you think I'm exaggerating? Wow. Watch Wonder Woman 1984 to see how bad it is.
Yeah, I haven't seen that yet. Now I'm going to watch it just to complain about it afterwards, so we can moan next
Just
week.
pick 15 minutes somewhere in the middle of the movie and watch that. It won't make sense, but you wouldn't have missed anything. Just before we have to go, did anyone understand? Did you watch Tenet? Christopher Nolan's Tenet, the movie Tenet. The most confusing movie ever of all time. This dude is known for doing Inception and confusing movies, but you watch Tenet, and the most you'll ever understand about Tenet is the 5 minutes before you put it on.
Jesus. Okay.
That's quite a way to sell it.
So you haven't done a good deal of selling them.
Yeah, there have been some crap movies lately.
All right, everybody. That's all we...
Ooh, I think Gareth got cut off right in the middle of saying goodbye.
We will see you tomorrow at 10, nice and early. Have an excellent Wednesday.